I'm going to start here. Angel Reese wants credit. She's not getting enough credit. She did this too. She taunted Caitlin Clark. She made this whole thing.
Hey there, basketball fans. Today, we're diving into some major drama in the WNBA. Angel Reese just started a huge fight about money, and Jason Whitlock isn't having any of it. You know Angel Reese, right? Rookie sensation, known for her trash talking and fierce play. Well, she's now demanding more money from the WNBA. But here's what's got everyone talking. Jason Whitlock just completely exposed why her demands make absolutely no sense. This isn't just a small disagreement, folks. Whitlock dropped some serious truth bombs about the WNBA's money problems that have Angel Reese looking totally out of touch with reality. The craziest part? Whitlock didn't just disagree with her, he pulled out actual numbers that show why Reese's demands might be the most delusional thing we've heard in sports this year. So is Whitlock being too harsh, or is he just brave enough to say what everyone else is thinking? Let's break down this whole mess and find out for ourselves. Let's start with the biggest problem in the whole debate, something Angel Reese seems to be completely ignoring. The WNBA is losing money. Not just a little bit of money, we're talking about $30 million every single year. That's right. While Reese is sitting on her podcast with teammate DeJounte Carrington demanding bigger paychecks, the league they play for is bleeding cash at an alarming rate. Whitlock didn't hold back when pointing this out. He said, "This is a league that averages losing $25 to $30 million a year. Think about that for a second. How can you demand more money from a business that's already losing millions?" But it gets even more shocking. The WNBA has been around for 29 years, and guess what? It's never made a profit in its entire history, not even once. Whitlock challenged listeners to name any other business in America that could survive for 29 years without ever making money. The truth is, the WNBA only exists because the NBA supports it financially. Without the NBA's help, the WNBA would have shut down years ago. This leads to Whitlock's most brutal takedown. He actually suggested that instead of demanding more money, WNBA players should be paying to play in the league. His exact words were, "If you got what you deserve, you'd be paying to play in the WNBA." That's some serious financial reality that Reese and Carrington seem completely blind to. They're talking about sitting out games if they don't get more money, but from where exactly? You can't blood money from a stone, and you can't get bigger contracts from a league that's already deep in the red. Now here's where things get really interesting. During their entire podcast conversation about deserving more money, Reese and Carrington completely ignored the biggest story in women's basketball, Caitlin Clark. Whitlock called him out completely. It's funny that the two people having this conversation are two people that absolutely hate Caitlin Clark and are jealous of Caitlin Clark, and he's got a solid point. Clark is breaking records left and right. When the Indiana Fever play, arenas are selling out, TV ratings triple or quadruple when Clark is on the court, and ticket prices are hitting levels never seen before in the WNBA. Yet somehow, Reese and Carrington managed to have an entire conversation about player value without mentioning Clark's name even once. As Whitlock put it, they couldn't think to say during this entire ordeal, because of the leverage that Caitlin Clark has given us, we may actually get paid more. The numbers don't lie. Games with Clark see massive attendance and viewership. Games without her, they go right back to the usual small numbers. Whitlock estimates that 90% of the new interest in the WNBA comes from one player, Caitlin Clark. What makes this even more striking is the contrast in their approaches. While Reese is constantly complaining on podcasts and social media, Clark is quietly putting in work on the court. Whitlock praised Clark for this, saying she doesn't have to run her mouth for attention. She can actually let her play on the court run her mouth for her. This silence from Reese about Clark reveals something important. Acknowledging Clark would mean admitting she's the reason for any new money coming into the WNBA, not Reese herself. And that's something Angel just can't bring herself to do. One of Whitlock's most powerful criticisms was about strategy. He's saying Reese is playing checkers in a game of chess, and he's not wrong. What does that mean exactly? It means Reese is making simple short-term moves without understanding the bigger, more complex game around her. She wants more money now, but doesn't see how her actions might hurt her future earnings. Whitlock pointed to a huge problem with today's athletes. They're overexposed. Everybody's got a podcast, everybody's getting interviewed non-stop, everybody's putting themselves out there, and they don't understand they're harming themselves, he explained. Think about sports stars from the past. Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, and even the early years of LeBron James. They let their game do the talking. Fans didn't know every single thought they had, every complaint about their contract, or every problem they had in the league. As Whitlock put it, athletes from previous generations had the advantage of we didn't know much about them. We didn't know how greedy, entitled, or stupid they were because they weren't overexposed. Every time Reese goes on another podcast or posts another complaint on social media, she's showing the public sides of herself that might turn fans away. She's removing the mystery and awe that used to surround great athletes. And the podcast where Reese and Carrington discussed strike plans, that's exactly the kind of strategic error Whitlock is talking about. They're showing their cards to everyone, including league executives and fans who might not support them. Whitlock even suggested that other WNBA players are probably thinking, Angel, would you shut up? Because every time she speaks out, she potentially hurts the league's image and makes it harder for all players to gain support. And now, we get to the most dangerous part of Reese's demands, the threat to sit out games if players don't get more money. Whitlock doesn't just disagree with this idea, he thinks it could be catastrophic for the entire WNBA. During their podcast, Reese and Carrington openly discussed the possibility of a player strike. They're not even talking about this season, they're looking ahead to the next collective bargaining agreement. But Whitlock warns this kind of talk is incredibly harmful. Work stoppages will irritate fans, and there will be lasting impact from that, Whitlock explained. He pointed to the 1994 Major League Baseball strike as a perfect example of how badly this can go wrong. That baseball strike nearly killed the sport's popularity overnight. Baseball had to rely on the famous home run race between Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa, later tainted by steroid scandals, to win fans back. But here's the crucial difference Whitlock highlights. Baseball had generations of deeply embedded cultural relevance to fall back on. The WNBA doesn't have that luxury. They've had mere months of genuine mainstream momentum, primarily thanks to one rookie, Caitlin Clark. The timing couldn't be any worse for a strike talk. Just as casual sports fans are finally giving women's basketball a chance, players are threatening to take the ball and go home. Whitlock cuts through the fantasy with brutal clarity. Fans aren't yet loyal to the league itself. They're following the Clark phenomenon. They're gonna risk ruining a good moment, Whitlock warned. The last thing they need is some sort of work stoppage. What makes this even more mind-blowing is that the WNBA's collective bargaining agreement doesn't even expire until 2027. Yet players like Reese are already floating strike threats with the league's financial situation still so fragile. Whitlock's verdict is merciless. These players risk killing the goose before it has a chance to lay golden eggs. As he put it, WNBA players striking would be the most tone-deaf pro-athlete move in history. So where does this leave us? The WNBA stands at a crossroads. For the first time in its history, thanks largely to Caitlin Clark, people are actually paying attention to women's basketball. This is a golden opportunity that might never come again. But instead of building on this momentum, players like Angel Reese are making demands that the league simply can't afford. They're threatening actions that could drive away the very fans they need to attract. They're playing a dangerous game with not just their own careers, but the future of the entire WNBA. Whitlock's criticisms isn't just about Angel Reese being wrong, it's about her potentially destroying something that thousands of female athletes have worked decades to build. As he said, these players are actively harming themselves through their short-sighted demands. This leaves us with some serious questions to think about. Is Jason Whitlock being too harsh on Angel Reese, or is he just saying what needs to be said? Is Reese really being delusional about the WNBA's financial reality? And the biggest question of all, if the WNBA can't figure out how to make money after 29 years, what happens next? Will we see a completely different women's basketball league emerge from all this drama? I want to hear your thoughts on this. Do you think Whitlock is right about Angel Reese's demands? Should WNBA players focus more on growing the game before demanding NBA-level money? Or do they deserve more right now despite the league's financial problems? Drop your opinions in the comments below, and if you want more unfiltered sports takes that others are afraid to give, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Caitlin Clark's impact on the WNBA is undeniable, but how did she get here? What kind of training turns a player into a game-changing superstar? Her skills don't just happen overnight, there's a method behind her dominance. Click here to watch how Caitlin Clark trains and what makes her one of the most unstoppable players in basketball today.